Hi, everybody. Let's try it one more time. This is my live Q&A session for Thursday the 6th, or Thursday the 12th of July. I'm all discombobulated a little bit today, trying to wait for this to catch up with the live feed so that hopefully we have some viewers and Xiaoqian can join me. Let's see. I can. Yeah. It doesn't. There, wait a minute. Hang on. Adding. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Hopefully this is good. Xiaoqian, look for something on your end that says that you can join me. Yeah. That's good. Xiaoqian, look for something on your end that says that you can join me. Wait a minute. I see
you. Can you see me now?
Yeah. We
Finally.
did it. Thank you. Sometimes the universe makes it challenging. Okay, so Xiaoqian, I need you to turn down the volume on your phone or your computer so that we don't hear the feedback from me.
Is it better now?
Yes, perfect. Because the live has a little bit of a delay, and so this is good. All right. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Let's start over again. My name is Marcy Melzer, and I am an intuitive speech and language pathologist, and I help parents teach their late talking children how to use the words they need with my Waves of Communication parent coaching program. And joining me today on this special Q&A session is Xiaoqian Zhang, and she has a son who is 7.5 years old, and he is a late talker. And I define late talkers as children who aren't talking yet. And simultaneously, or I guess at the same time, Xiaoqian's son has an autism diagnosis, and Xiaoqian was concerned because her boy wasn't using natural language. And so that's kind of how she found us with Waves of Communication and joined our community. And so I want to say welcome, Xiaoqian, for joining me today on this Q&A.
Hi.
I'm really...
Yeah. Do you want me to do a self-introduction? So my name is
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I'm originally from China, but I have stayed and worked here for last 18 years. And so my son is 7.5 years, and also my husband is American. So he basically have this sort of like a bilingual environment growing up. Yeah, and more to the story. And when he was late talking at 2 years old, and we were not really worried because it was very affectionate, and he was very, and also, we have late talkers in the family, so, and who turned out to be perfectly fine. So we're never concerned. Then when he was 3, we started to get worried, and then we wait to him. And then, when you get assigned for the pediatrician and they have put you on the waiting list. And finally, when he was 3.5 years, and we get this ASD diagnosis. And, when you first get a diagnosis, we were sort of in denial kind of stage, because he just doesn't look autistic to us. And he's so connected with us all the time, and he will not leave you alone. But still, we follow the conventional path, and we start the speech therapy and occupational therapy. And also he started going to a private school, and with the emphasis on, communication and language. And he started using single words to label and request when he was 5 years old. And after that, the progress was really slow. And eventually, he started his ABA therapy when he was 5.5 years. And at the very beginning, we saw great progress, and his vocabulary really expanded. And so that lasted about 6 months, and then my insurance started covering the ABA totally, and we put him in a full-time ABA program. So he was doing 40 hours a week. And after he started the 40 hours a week, and his progress just stopped. And also we saw so much more repetitive behaviors, and he just looks so much more autistic. I mean, it's very hard to put into the scientific data, but just to me, it's like I feel that he's so detached from me. And also I don't really hear any much vocal speech, and he's using iPad to communicate a lot. Even that, he seemed to be really reluctant. He would only communicate when he needs us to do something. And if you say no to him, he will get really angry. It's just really difficult to deal with. And yeah, so we have almost no hope. And for the future, so I just decide to give a try of the different approach to help him to talk, because I feel, you know, it was already talking some, so it's not like a zero speech. And also, I know that his receptor was so wonderful, and if he want, he really follow direction perfectly, and a really complex direction. So I just don't see that why he cannot talk. And yeah, so I found Marcy, and I'm very happy. And we have been in the program for about 2 weeks and a half. It's not really 3 weeks yet. And
Yeah,
I was very happy. I'm very happy about everything I see till now. And my husband, who was not really sure in the beginning, so I became this like the only parent who jumped in the program, and also I became the only parent who facilitated language home for about 10 days. And then last weekend, he was telling me like, wow, this is really the best decision we made over the years. But we didn't do that early, and we went through so much torture over the years. Well, you know, sometimes it really took a journey to find the right solution, and it's a learning experience for us as well. Yeah.
right, right. Well, good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that, you know, I saw a couple moms pop in. One mom said that she was feeling the same way. And I think that a number of parents who may be watching this, their kids are younger. There's another mom who's on here, and I'll talk to you too, about younger kids too. But and this mom says that her son has an insecure attachment to her. Do you feel like that your son has an issue with his confidence, that he is very connected to you because you're helping him with communication, Xiaoqian?
Absolutely, but I would not put that into a negative term as insecurity something. I mean, all the kids feel attached to their parents, and a lot of kids are very shy, and if they don't have the diagnosis, and it's just normal kids behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I actually really, I don't put it personally anybody, but just my own perspective. I really don't like all the terminologies they use negatively on kids, like STEM or repetitive behaviors and elope, and it's like it just really put like a negative connotation on the kid. And then if your parents start using the terms to look at our kids and we start feel bad towards our own kids, and then very soon everything the kids do becomes sort of like a pathology, and I don't think it's healthy.
Yeah.
But it's my own opinion, so I'm very careful about what I'm saying.
Well, let's talk about what's different now about your household and what you're doing for language facilitation that's different than what you were doing before, because you were trying before to get your son to use words, right?
Yes, all the time. And I would say before he started using words, and we really have no idea how to get him to say anything. And it's just really, really difficult. But you know, we have the bond, so we always know what he wanted. And after he starts speaking single words, but still it's very difficult. If I tell him, guys, say apple, he will not do it, even though he was able to do it. And sometimes, but he will not perform for us. And then when he entered this ABA therapy, and they use this prompting technique, so if he say something, he get an award. And that technique really worked beautifully at the very beginning, and we learned that technique, so we start prompting him a lot at home. But then, after he reached 7, I think he probably is a little bit mature, and you can no longer prompt him by giving him a cookie, and then I don't want a cookie if you this is what I get, because he's seemed to be, to me, like he probably is more sophisticated. For you cannot just buy him off with snacks anymore. And also he gets snacks all the time from his grandparents, from us anyway, so he doesn't really need to perform to get snacks. So that technique did not work, and we have been in therapy for a long time. He was still not using phrases, and actually I think we sort of like saw some kind of regressions to some extent. And like he would, for example, for some word there are 3 syllables, and he would only say the first syllable, and then it's just really hard for you to understand what he's trying to talk about, because even though he missed some syllables. And then they would give him an iPad to communicate. And that was refreshing at first because he was able to make a lot of requests, like a more sophisticated request, which he cannot do vocally. But after a while, I feel it's not really the language. It's like I feel the connection with him was lost somehow with all the prompting and iPad. It's really sad, and yeah.
So what happens different as far as, so then we had our language facilitation strategy session, our first one, and we talked about the kinds of things that were sort of holding him up from using language and some kind of behaviors and things that you guys were doing, including the prompting. And so what do you think was the biggest thing that you did that, well, so before you made this change, he was mostly using the iPad to request and single words when you prompted him. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. And so
sometimes
then
in an urgent situation, he would use the word spontaneously, but it always has to be like urgent, and he really wanted it.
Right. If he really wanted something. All right. So, and now we're 2.5 weeks later, and how is he letting you know what he wants now?
I think the basic mentality, it's like the change in us is that the language is not really about requesting or labeling, and but it's more about you just want to say something, you just want to comment on something, you just want to communicate, you just want to use a language bond with someone important in your life. So the number one strategy I adopt is no prompting anymore. Well, I still catch myself doing that from time to time. That's like I have this habit after years, so I cannot really quit that overnight. And also, I feel like for our household, my problem is that I'm always prompting him. Is that, and sometimes it's really difficult on me as well, because even if I prompt, he will not do it sometimes. And it was very, very frustrating for me, and it's very frustrating for him. And my husband, on the other hand, he has sort of like an opposite problem, because guys has a wonderful receptive. So he understands everything we say to him. So my husband would really speak this like long, elaborate sentence with, it's like the way he talked to any other adult, and the guys would respond too. So the first change I had to quit is that I'm going to stop the prompting. And also I told my husband, yeah, even though he understands what you say, but the language you used is not something he can imitate. Right. So he had to simplify his language, and I had to stop the prompting. Yeah. And so
you each had your own, your own primary strategy to work with, and there were other things that we gave you to do too, and how to respond to those things. But I think so just by those major changes, which were big, because you've had to really concentrate on doing it, you even catch yourself doing it, and right away, because you realize you don't get the response that you want when you prompt, but you do when you use your other strategies. So what kind of natural communication have you seen from Gaius since you started using natural language facilitation?
I feel it really changed the dynamic between us, and it has not been such a long time ago. I remember when I first started trying a strategy, I didn't believe that. I feel, okay, I would just give it a try. If I was disappointed, just one more disappointment. But the first two days, like day 3 or day 2, and he'd start imitating me and even phrases. And that was very nice because, when I say something, I didn't request him to imitate, and he just imitates spontaneously. So that was really refreshing for me. And yeah, and then it just happened gradually. And I think that now he would able to, and then later, even if he's not really using word, and he would point and he would look at me and he would look back. And then with his simple vocabulary, he's going to share information and telling me that he's heard, or telling me he doesn't want to do something. And now I was able to get him imitate phrases all the time. And not only that, he is able to use his own word to comment on something. So before, if he say up, and he probably wanted me to pick him up, or if he say eat, he probably wanted me to give him some food. But now he would say up because he wanted me to look at him when he goes up. And also he say eat. Even if he already had the food, he just look at me with a big smile on his face and telling me I'm eating. So that's just so nice. You know, it's like, yeah, that's
That's
really
great.
really what we need.
Yeah,
And
that
also, I think, meanwhile, what is really significant is that we see such a dramatic change in his temper. And before, he just get agitated all the time. And I would not say that super big tantrum, but just like he's always frustrated, and you can see that in him. But now it's just gradually reduced, so to such a great extent, and he's very happy all the time. And also he's just feel more confident. And nowadays we have construction workers in our house and working on the renovation stuff, and he walked to those workers and invite them to jump with him, and also ask them to watch him to climb out to the ladders, and also offer to hammer the nail and how to stir the concrete. It's just really cute. And he's imitating them, and he
wow.
the side. Yeah,
So he's requesting from them to use their tools or touch their things verbally using words.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
think
when
like day
and
one, day two, his voice is very faint, and I
uh-huh.
actually saw him. I saw him talking to them, but his voice was very faint, and also the construction field was noisy, and they couldn't hear him. And the day three, and he actually was very confident and laughing and speak loudly.
Wow, that's great. That's really great. I mean, though that's the kind of natural language that that most of the parents who have older kids are the things that they're worried about are never going to be able to emerge. So I think that, you sharing that is really helpful, really helpful. There is one question I have from a mom, and she said, "Why do you think not doing the print prompt makes a difference?"
Uh, I would say, I'm just talking from my own experience. I feel maybe prompting was necessary at a certain stage. Maybe when before he had his first word, and it's important to prompt it so he could get his first word out. But now I'm having a kid who has already have a lot of words in him, but he would just refuse to use it. And also he has good receptive, and also he's older, so he's slightly more sophisticated, and you would not be able to prompt him by a cookie. He didn't
Right.
care.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Heard. The one of the things that I did remember when we did our analysis was that we talked about how Gaius is incredibly patient, and so many of these kids who have been in ABA therapy, especially, learn to wait for the right stimulus to come to them. They're really good at waiting because eventually you'll give in or cave if I wait long enough to be able to get what I want. So or they just don't care enough to perform, like you said. And that's kind of that's the same sort of response that I, have felt from other folks
I think
too.
just add to that, there's another problem to me with the prompting is that in the past, if you prompt guy, then he will say cookie, but he will say it so passively. There's no expression on his face. And it's like the vocal speech is something really negative he has to get over so he can get the good stuff, which is a cookie. You know
Right.
what I mean?
So
So it's like, okay, I just need to do this nasty task so I can get the good stuff later. But I feel
yeah.
language facilitation is to teach him, okay, saying cookie is a good stuff itself.
Right.
Yeah.
That is such a good way to say it exactly. That, being able to not just request a cookie, but talk about the cookie or offer someone a cookie, all of those ways to talk about it is the good stuff. And what's really exciting is Gaius is learning that language is the good stuff that he can use to engage with people. And instead of, like you were saying, him starting to withdraw more from
Oh,
others, because he was, not confident in communicating. Now he's got some languages and he's actually reaching out and engaging with strangers, to want to
yeah.
communicate with them.
So just let me give you an example. Before he wanted a cookie and he walked to me and he said cookie, and his face was totally blank. Okay, and I gave him a cookie and he grabbed it and ran away. But
Mm-hmm.
now I don't prompt him, and then he walked to me. He told me hungry, and then they said, okay, let's go down. Then he said, go down. Then said, do you want to go to the kitchen? Then he said kitchen. Then I said, what do you want? And he said, cookie. Then I gave him the cookie. Then he later he held the cookie to me and laughed and point, cookie, cookie. So that's just so different, you know, with the sort of like dynamic, even though I'm not saying that he's using like elaborate sentence or phrases, but it's just like now there's sort of like a back and forth communication, and also he's sharing information, even though there's no, without any purpose of getting a cookie. So before, like the term cookie is some almost like it's like the exam, the final exam you had to get over before the summer break, you know? Yeah, I had to just hold my breath to get over it so I can get the nice stuff later.
Yeah.
But now,
And
it's
now
like
he's learning, yeah.
Communication is fun, you know? So I
That's
think
right.
that's
If it isn't fun.
Yeah,
Good. Well, that's a great way to talk about it. And Anne-Marie says, whoops. Oh, Anne-Marie says, like my child has apraxia and expressive disorder, and the prompt was recommended to us, but she hasn't seen much of a difference. That angle has made much of a difference for her. Yeah. So here's another mom who says, my son said moo while working with a puzzle in speech around 2 years old, and weeks with the same puzzle, and has never said it again, even with the same play with the puzzle. And you know, it's kind of hard to say about that one specific thing. Maybe has your child ever said moo before, you know, that instead of that one circumstance to try to say, have your child say the same thing over again, that's kind of the same as saying cookie to get the cookie. Every time we play with this puzzle, we say sounds. And I think with language facilitation, it's a little bit different, so that when we look at all of the experiences we do, we kind of follow the child's lead.
That's
and
right.
The way they want to talk about the circumstance is kind of the way that if you follow their lead and sort of see what's interesting about it. One of the things, we just had a little meeting today, and Shaukian was talking about, you know, because her son has an autism diagnosis, she started to look very microscopically at all of his behaviors and wonder
horrible.
if those behaviors were part of, you know, something that you were stuck with because he has an autism diagnosis, because those behaviors go with the diagnosis. And some of those behaviors are going away, aren't they?
Oh yeah. And you know, each kid, I believe, have some weird behaviors just because being a kid. But if you have this diagnosed, then it's like you will be like using a magnifying glasses all the time on your kid, like checking out, oh, why is he silent and why is he withdrawing? And that was really horrible. I think, like, I personally don't really have a problem with the diagnosis, but if the diagnosis also implies like the fear for the future, it's going to be really unhealthy for the whole family in the long term. So yeah, when he was first diagnosed, he was lining things up. That's actually one of the reasons, in addition to late talking, that got him the diagnosis. And that's actually stopped a few months after the diagnosis, and he no longer lines things up. And then there was a time, and he was flapping his hand, and that stopped after a while as well. And just before we started the language facilitation program, he was always like, you know, patting his hand on the table, and he really loved to feel the texture of any furniture or any wall, and that looks so like autistic. But I was not really too worried about that, because it was not really interfering with his other daily activities. But his ABA therapist really paid a lot of attention to that, and really counting how many times he was patting the table. Yeah, but now, you know, at home, he seldom does that, just because he was always trying to communicating with us. So I feel, you know, if you are late talking, I'm sure, I mean, being a kid, you will have some bad, weird behaviors. And being a kid plus late talking, you will have a lot of weird behaviors.
Yeah, I think, you know, and it depends on, you know, and that's what we've talked about, is when we look at those behaviors, weird behaviors, you know, whatever, that the behaviors that catch your attention, let's just call them that.
Okay.
And you start to look at why is he having those behaviors? Is he doing this as a way to communicate? Is he doing this because he doesn't feel good? Is he doing this because he enjoys it? I mean, sometimes we just twirl our hair because we enjoy it and you don't even
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
realize you're doing it, kind of things. We all have sensory systems that, the reasons that we do the behavior we do. But I think what's great is that you look at your son as a whole boy, and all of his behaviors are potentially communication. And if it's something he's trying to tell you, even if that something is leave me alone while I snuggle with this blanket right now because I just need a little alone snuggle time,
That's right.
we just so that you're really looking at those behaviors not as a something to discipline or something to correct, but as something that is actually communication. And
Or as
you're
like a
showing, yeah.
stupid way to communicate right now, but you will find him a better way to communicate later.
Exactly. And when you understand what those behaviors communicate, then you can turn them into words. And that's what's happening for you. Okay, one more last question for you. What would you say is some advice that you would give to any parent who isn't sure if language facilitation might be right for them?
I feel if you before you start the language facilitation program, and I definitely agree with Marcy's criteria, and you must make sure your kids can produce some vocal sound, and also your kid was not physically in some like physically ill, and in pain,
Mm-hmm.
which yeah, and also your kids have some connection with you. It's not totally isolated, and they really want to show you something sometimes, or can follow your direction sometimes. So that is something you want to, or if you still have some problem, you probably want to solve the problem before start the language facilitation program. And the second, I think my second, probably I want to tell the parents is that, a lot of the ABA therapy was really highly recommended, and it's also scientifically research based and also data based, but don't be totally fooled by their data. Sometime my son came home with a report and saying that he requested um, 300 times. I thought, oh, that's great. That's great communication. But actually, he just used his iPad to request us the same video 100 times. So I would not call that communication at all. but when it comes to language facilitation, to us, like eye contact matters, and how you use a word in a different context matters. And you cannot really track down those progress with data, but you can definitely track that down with your intuition, because that's your kid, you know. So I would
Yeah.
also say that intuition matters. And I think the third advice I'm saying, I probably want to give to parents, that if you really want your kid to uh, have like better communication skills, and but not really, I feel like you probably have a late talking kid, and a lot of areas your kid probably fall behind. And don't look at the negative part right now, and pay attention to the strengths. And actually, I'm very happy Marcy taught me how to look at the strengths of Gaius, and instead of just looking at his negative behaviors, which is totally distracting. And don't do that. Don't punish yourself for that. And look at his strengths and pick it up his strengths, and also be matched. Just be a little bit higher than his strengths, and so he can imitate, and just be one staircase above him that he will climb up, and eventually I think he will get there. I mean, even right now, at 7 years old, and only using single word and occasional phrases, I'm not the most proud, the mom that who has a son to really brag about, but I'm sure he will get there eventually if he keep the same progress he's having right now. And yeah.
Well, the only thing I'm going to disagree with you about is that you do have a son to brag about because your son
Okay.
has learned how to use natural language in 2.5 weeks. So I think that is quite something to be proud of. And you should also be proud as a language facilitator mom to be able to help your son understand that words are fun, that it's not just the cookie that is fun, that the words are fun ways for him to communicate and enhance that connection that he already has with you as parents. And that's what's really important. And Missy had a question really quick. her child is younger. She's been posting a couple on here we've been talking about, and she says, do you think that this would have worked for you before Gaius had words? If you would use this method first before you started that, do you think that this method would have worked for you then?
You know, honestly, I don't know. Sorry. I know that
Yeah,
answer is disappointing. It's just really hard for me to tell. And
it's honest.
I don't know. And but you know,
Yeah.
even if it doesn't, but I don't think you should, before your kids start using word, I don't think you should. I know you are very anxious to get him to speak, but you should pay attention to other areas. But I feel there's a lot of things they have to do before really start using words. So if you can use the language facilitation to improve his imitation skill, that's good, and that's a step forward. And
Right.
if you can use that to improve his eye contact, and that's great too. And also, if you just increase the bond between you and a kid, and that's great too. So
Right.
I'm not saying that language facilitation teach me how to make him speak. I'm just saying it's help him to rewire his brain so he has a different mentality for language. And now, whenever he's doing something, he will just point to that and say, "Mom, a shirt, Mom, pants," even though he doesn't need my
Mhm.
help. And he's constantly sharing and communicating. And that's what I need. And even if he never speak, but if he is constantly communicating, and I think he will be fine. Even if he speak, but speak like a robot, that's not going to work.
Right, right. Well, and you know what? That's a really good way to talk about. I mean, I really appreciate that. Obviously, you didn't do language facilitation before he had words. You had a different method that got him started talking. So that's an honest answer. So I really appreciate that. And the only thing that I can tell you, Missy, is that the other parents that are in my program that have started before. So, the first families that I started with were 2 years old, and I have a couple two families of 2 years old and 3 years old, and their moms also were a little bit concerned because they've been, a week or so in, and their kids aren't using natural language. They aren't imitating as quickly, but they are starting to imitate nonverbal things, and they are starting to have better engagement, and they are starting to understand and follow directions more consistently and more specifically. And these are kids who weren't able to do those things before. So remember, with any kind of language development, that receptive understanding has to come first. In order for your child to be able to say words, they have to have them in their little file cabinets of vocabulary to be able to choose from. So engaging and following directions and receptive language is always the foundation for language facilitation. But it doesn't usually take long, like you said, for those kids to start to imitate, just like Gaius is doing. He's now, without a prompt, imitating non-verbally and verbally the things that he sees and hears. And the other language
All the time
facilitation
too.
moms with the younger kids, yeah, all the time without any kind of prompting. And that's the main foundational skill, is to get your child to imitate something that they see. So I hope, Missy, that if you are interested in helping your child learn to imitate consistently without prompting, that definitely is what we go for, language facilitation. And I see Tracy's on here too. She is a mom who has a little guy who she was got him going from nonverbal into using verbal language, and he was 5 when they started. So I think that what I wanted really most for you to help parents understand, Xiaoqian, is that even though you have a child who's past that preschool age, who's older now, and was still really only using very limited language opportunities, just for requesting only when on desperation, when he had to or when he really wanted something, to now be using language naturally, functionally. And that is a real ability, that's a real achievable thing for other families with older kids.
Yeah, and also it happened really fast.
And
I was
it happened really
like
fast.
3 months or 6 months to see any change, but actually it happened really, really fast. And you know that when I first started signing up for your program, I was not really certain, and you want to have the second strategy session with me in a week. I said, okay, let's do up to 2 weeks, but I'm not sure whether I can see any improvement. I didn't have much confidence before, but it happened. Yeah, you probably have picked up something in guys. You know it's going to happen, right?
Well, it's not, I've seen a lot of kids, and the trick is ultimately parents like you who decide to make the kinds of changes that you made. Because if you hadn't given up some of those old strategies that you were using, you wouldn't have seen the kind of improvement that you make right now. So, yeah, Tracy's sending her love. Hey, Tracy. And Tracy knows what it's like too to, work really hard for a really long time at something and be so frustrated with it and just make that kind of change. But it takes a lot for you as a mom to give up some of those things to do things in a new way. And I really appreciate that. So,
It
and I
actually
know that Gaius does.
it's so much more fun than prompting for me. Yeah, it's like you
That's
have to
good.
be enjoying that. Otherwise, I feel like a kid can feel your frustration, and then they will be even more isolating themselves from the parents. So actually, Marcy, I have a question for you. So since we talk about older,
Okay.
why do we always find a statement like my kid? If a kid doesn't speak by age 5, then he will never able to speak. So why do we always find that? Like there is a like sort of like a deadline for the kids' language development, and after that, the window seems to be closed, and which is not really true, because I have seen with my own eyes, which is not true. But why do we always find that information?
Well, that's a really good question. And what I think happens is, especially when kids get into a structured program that is data reliant, okay? So remember, we always, in order for any kind of therapy to continue, you have to show that it's making some kind of progress. And most late talkers are resistant to using words for one reason or another. And what happens with the ABA therapies or any kind of therapies is you work for so long on something, and if you don't see progress in it, then you have to shift and come up with an alternative. And I think what happens with a lot of families is they start with the alternatives so soon that they haven't given their kids the opportunity to learn, the regular way. And so maybe, like you said, you get to 5 years old and, verbal language hasn't worked till now. They haven't taken into consideration the fact that maybe a child didn't hear for a period of time, or maybe they were physically not well, or maybe they weren't ready to start using language. And now they are just ready to start. But because they weren't able to do it before and it didn't work, they assume that they need a different approach. And so they get off target before they even get off to the good start. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's all dependent on if a child is making progress, then they're going to continue to do that. But if a child is so resistant to verbal language that they start to have tantrums, and when people are requesting, like I said, they don't, therapists don't want to fight with kids. So they just make it as easy as possible for them to communicate. And instead of fighting with them to use words, they just give them the picture systems instead. And then the kids get on that track, and then they never get to work on verbal language. And the reason that your son is developing verbal language is because you gave up the other stuff and started to work on verbal language again, and he understood, because now that he can get it, oh yeah, this is the way I should have done it. Had you done this when he was 5, you would have seen it then. Had you done it when he was 3, you would have seen it then. But it was just the choice that you did. It was because they don't like the prompting, so they teach them something else.
it's not only, I feel the problem is not only with the prompting, it's also with just like a structured environment where the language is taught, so they don't really apply that to real life unless there's an emergency. And but
Right, right.
in real life we don't really have that many emergencies, so they don't get many opportunity to practice in real life, so their language skill just don't really go very far.
Right. You're
Yeah,
right.
I feel
And
like
Missy says that her speech pathologist actually just told us that they found that isn't true, which is absolutely right. They used to say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, like you can't learn a new language after 5 or 6 or 7 years old, that your brain's ability to learn new things shifts when you hit a certain age. But all of that's not true, and Missy's right. The modern neuroscience has completely debunked that issue,
Would you agree with
because
that too?
people can make changes and learn new language at any age. I mean, I learned to speak Spanish when I was in my 40s. So you absolutely can learn new language at any age. That's true. And Tracy says, our kiddos have taught us how to communicate their way, and that's for sure. I went from making his life super easy by knowing everything he wanted. I had it ready before he needed to ask me. And so why would he speak if he didn't need to? Which was another reason that happened. Her little guy was sick for a long time and couldn't use words. And so she learned to never expect him to try. And they weren't expecting him to try to use words at ABA either. They were all working on receptive language. So he had great receptive language, but he never was asked. Like in Tracy's case, they didn't prompt at all. And so, but they also weren't facilitating language in any other way. She just never expected any try at all. And in language facilitation, we definitely expect a try at communication. We just reward the try. Marcy's program helped me with this big time, right? So what we did was we learned how to get Tracy's boy into understanding that when he uses language to ask for things, that he gets them, and that that his tries are just as exciting for his mom. And that's the other thing, that that intuition part is really important, is that you as parents really know what your kids are communicating better than anybody, better than any speech therapist ever could. You have to, because you have to get their needs met. And just by understanding that is, and it says forces better eye contact too, Tracy says too. It's not that
Yeah.
you're forcing it so much, but it is just a matter of, look, when I'm talking to you, I just want you to make sure that you're acknowledging me. And you don't have to have this kind of eye contact. It's just a matter of, are we on the same page and talking about the same thing? So yeah, I think that's it.
Actually, guys, we never had an issue with guys' eye contact all this time until he started full-time ABA, and I started noticing like a lack of eye contact, which is really scary for me. But now, 2 weeks in the language facilitation program, I can see that his eye contact is much, much better, and which is something, everybody probably knows some term called joint attention. And he would look at something and point and then say that and look back at me. It's just sharing information. Yeah, I think that's just so cool. That's so neat. That's because he had this kind of ability. So I feel that I'm very confident he can move from here and go even further,
Right, I know, and that's the exciting. Yeah, I mean, we're only 2.5 weeks in, and you're already seeing so much nicer, just communication intent and really nice language. So I think that's what's amazing.
I would be very happy to do another interview with you in a year. You probably will see more.
I know, I can't. That's great. I mean, in a few months even. And then the other thing that we talked about that you're going to be looking at different is maybe some different kinds of educational environments where going out of the one-on-one situation and into more social kinds of learning, so that now that Gaius can communicate more effectively with peers, and things like that, and be able to do some more natural educational times, like the library story time.
Definitely reducing the ABA to maybe 10 hours a week, or maybe even totally cut it off. And I don't think he doesn't like it. Actually, he told me he wants speech therapy, not ABA. So he knows what his problem is. It's not about behavior. It's just he needs us to tell him how to talk and communicate. And we now know that's where all his problem actually is from not able to communicate. So right now, because before he didn't have a confidence to talk to other people. He didn't have a confidence to talk to strangers at all. So he only was talking to us or the families and relatives. But now I start seeing him wanting to talk, to other people. We have hired 3 construction workers in the house, and he keep
Yeah.
harassing them with his words. And he told them he's hungry when they are eating pizza, so they gave him a pizza. Which is really cute. He would not do that at all before.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And Tracy says they're dropping ABA at the end of the summer, which is cool. And Jennifer says, what is thought of PECS? Now, I've done another video about that too, but the question I wanted to ask for you is, do you think that you'll be using this iPad in a year to communicate, Xiaoqian?
He still go to ABA this summer because we're on a contract, which I really regret
Right.
having for that contract. So he's still using
Yeah.
iPad at ABA, but at home we don't use it almost like 90% of the time. But sometimes, like last week, and he told me he wanted to go to zoo, so he grabbed my hand and saying zoo, zoo, and then he said like elephant, but I'm not sure what it means zoo because if you hear one word out of context,
Yeah.
so I grabbed the iPad and I created a button zoo, and then he pressed it and it told me that I want to go to zoo through iPad.
Right.
So like at this in my situation, iPad is more for like a backup. Do you know what I mean?
Right. So
Yeah,
eventually you think you'll phase it out altogether?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Well, the other reason I'm sort of like still using iPad a little bit because I feel that iPad is teaching him to read a little bit because he's also
right. Well, yeah, I mean, it's different. I mean, we're talking about PECS versus using the iPad. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can use technology. I have other moms that use the Gemini program that they're using with their kids in addition.
I love it.
And guys likes the Gemini program. And that kind of takes the place of some kinds of video content that can be effective for kids. But the Gemini program by itself wouldn't be facilitating language. That just is something that Gaius really likes to watch that is helping him learn how to, develop more speech, that kind of stuff.
I like to watch this, like, the Gemini, they model the mouth shape, and he like to observe
right.
that. And because he has trouble with articulation, so I think that's very helpful.
And that's a good way for you to do. Yeah, and if he likes it, and certainly, and and the other thing is now he'll start to imitate with the Gemini program, start to talk with it too, because imitation's natural for him. It's starting to get more natural.
Yeah.
So.
Also, before he would only imitate after us, but yesterday I saw him imitate after the workers and the thing they say and also the thing they do. So I think, okay, good. So you get like more sources for imitation. So
That's right.
Yeah.
And
it's
really great
cool to see. And I was really desperate before. You can imagine I have an older kid. And we had therapy, and it just like we were exhausted dragging him from one therapy to another, and there was a lot of passive report in the past. It just, you can imagine how much disappointment we had. But now I don't feel that way at all. My husband doesn't feel that way at all, and we are just going to love him and nurture him and let him follow his pace of development, and I'm sure he will get there. And he is already a communicator,
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So that's what's great. Now he's going to be a great language communicator. He's going to be able to use language. And then the other thing that we talked about too is teaching him how to speak Chinese again, because he understands Chinese, because he heard a lot of Chinese when he was young. And that's the other thing that's down the road for you, is getting him to start to speak Chinese and English.
Oh God, nobody would give me that confidence except you. So I'm so happy about that. And after he was not talking for so long, so before I was only speaking Chinese to him, and then I feel, okay, he can barely manage even one language. So I switched back to English. And, if I start seeing more words coming out of him, I'm going to switch back to Chinese.
I think it's great, and I think you can do it.
I test him on the receptive Chinese, and he responds to it. I asked him to get his scroll from the other room in Chinese, and then he got it for me. So I know he has receptive there. So yeah.
So there's no reason why you can't work on Chinese too. We talked about how to do that, and I think that's definitely something that's in your future, is to keep him bilingual.
Yeah, I think another thing I really want to recommend about your program, and I'm just going to speak out loud here, it's just like you're always available. And before we are, and I think, for me, I was so intimidated by the whole situation. And, I was a first-time parent, and nobody, it's already hard to be a parent, not to mean a parent with special needs. And I was really relying on the therapist to make decisions and to do the therapy for him. But now I started doing language facilitation. I realized actually I have more power than I have ever imagined. And if I have a little problem saying like, oh, hey Marcy, guys, it's missing syllables in the word again, and how to correct that, then you would tell me the strategy right away, so I can use it right away, even in the weekend. We all had a problem of us getting sick, and the doctor's office is closed over the weekend, but you are not closed. And
yeah, it's true.
I told you that he's having so much problem with articulation, but now he's doing better, and he started correcting himself all the time. And looking,
yeah.
Oh, I got it wrong. So I'm okay, walk, okay, eat, and getting the word correct. So he's aware of what the kind of sound he's making and trying to make it right,
Right. Wow. That's a lot to be proud of. Like I said, I think you have a brilliant boy. After 2.5 weeks, for parents to see the kind of progress that you've made. And I wish I could say that you were unique, because every family in the program has seen some really nice gains in each in their own way. And the best thing about it is that now your view of the future is wide open. You're just going to be able to get his language as great as you hope it can be, because he can understand everything and he has great communication, and now you're going to get him verbal bilingually.
Also, I feel the language facilitation program definitely built up his desire to communicate, and which is seriously lacked before that. Yeah, especially the ABA. Sorry, I probably talked too negatively about ABA, but that's only my personal experience. But I think ABA is great to train him to have some skills, but it's not going to teach him to have the desire to communicate. And you as a parent are the only one who will give your kid the desire to really communicate. And communicating is actually different from talking. So communicating means talking, and also eye contact, and also gesture and expression, and everything counts.
Right. And understanding all of your messages and making sure that you understand his. And I think that's it. It's all one big package. When we look at our kids as whole communicators, then we can get them using just kind of amazing language. So that's great. All right. And it says it's also very empowering for parents, Tracy says. Well, I'm really glad, because that's what's really important too.
The best part of that is that it's really empowering for parents. And I don't know why, sometimes the diagnosis is so punishing for parents. As like you have this diagnosis from the doctor, and then you search online, and you see so many horrible stories, and then you were told that most of the kids cannot be even independent, and just make your daily life so miserable. And I mean, I personally don't think it's necessary to feel that miserable. And
right, no, it's not necessary at all to feel miserable. It's not good, right?
Yeah. Also, it's so like the diagnosis is just so common. It's like 1 in 59. I don't know how much it really matters to have a diagnosis or not. It's like, yeah.
Right. Well, I think, what matters most is that, you, especially for language facilitation, what matters most is that you understand your child and your child understands you, and that you help them be able to communicate all those messages with everyone, with the whole world. So I think that's what's really great about it. So, all right. Well, this video is getting long, and I think you're doing a great job, Xiaoqian, Tracy says, and I agree with Tracy. You've done an amazing job with your boy, and I want to thank you again.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank you again for joining us and sharing your story, because I know that there are other parents who are going to watch this who have kids that are older, and I know that they're worried too, because they have a diagnosis and they're not sure what their future is for their kids. And it's my big mission to make sure that parents understand that your child's future is wide open for language. You do not have to be limited. You don't have to limit your child, and you can get them to communicate as long as they meet that basic criteria. So if you are a parent out there and you want to know more about waves of communication and how to get started with your child, the best way to do that is on my website at wavesofcommunication.com. And you can watch my free class there for parents, and that's the best way to get started. You can always reach out and send me a message too. So thanks again, Xiaoqian, for joining us so much. And I'm sure I'll see you around in our language facilitation journey in our community. And all of you parents, thank you so much for watching. I do these weekly Q&As every week, and if you want to join me next Thursday, you'll see me post on there. You can join and ask more questions about your child and their language facilitation journey and their late talking situation, and see if we can't help with waves of communication. So I'll let everybody go for now. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you all next time. Have a great
For
day.
helping with my family. Bye bye.
Bye.